This is John Jackman's journal. He was a soldier with the 9th Kentucky Infantry. This episode is called Heavy Volleys of Musketry, May 26, 1864. At daylight, the 9th and 5th Kentucky moved to the left of the division and commenced fortifying. The morning was very hot. At noon, before we got the works done, received orders to quit work. At 1 p.m., the two regiments moved to the right of Finley, and we immediately set to work completing the works, which were nothing more than piles of rotten logs. We had not quite finished our defenses just before sundown when our skirmishers commenced firing. The minis whistled over us until darkness came on. Shells were also thrown pretty freely. When night came, the regiment was deployed in the works, single file, and 2 or 3 yards apart. The other regiments, 2nd and 4th, had been here all day fortifying. At night, they were extended around, further to the right, and we had to fill up the interval by deploying. Soon after dark, I rolled up in my blanket and lay down to sleep. Once, the skirmishers in front commenced firing, and we were all up in a moment. The firing soon stopped, and we again went to sleep. May 27th. A little before day, our regiment moved around to the right, and just as daylight came, we advanced up the hill expecting to have a hard fight, but Company H in front as skirmishers found only a skirmish line, which fell back after a little firing. Our regiment immediately commenced fortifying on top of the hill. I went with Company B on skirmish to the right. Not being fairly light yet and seeing a line of battle advancing across a field, we first thought the soldiers were Federals, but the troops proved to be Vaughan's brigade, Cheatham's division. Cheatham's division advanced and took possession of a range of hills and commenced fortifying. They only had to drive off a heavy skirmish line, which fired briskly as they went back, inflicting considerable loss to the Confederates. About 10 o'clock, we marched back to our position on the right of Finley, but had hardly gotten in the trenches when we were ordered back to the hill again to the right. We have been lying here all evening, the minis and shells continually flying over us. Tonight, the boys are digging trenches, but I do not see the need, for Vaughan is in front of us on a fortified line. May 28th. Before daylight, clothing was issued to the regiment. At dawn, we moved to the position marked 5 inches on the map and occupied the works which had been constructed by Vaughan or Maney's brigade, all of Cheatham's division having moved to the right except the skirmish line. The hill upon which we are now stationed is very steep and rugged at its terminus on the right, gradually sloping off to the left of the regiment being down nearly in a valley or break across the hill. We are 300 feet above the level. A and I are fortified about the top of the hill. The Federal sharpshooters are very close to us and keep a stream of bullets coming over the hill all the time. There were some old smooth-bore muskets left lying around by the Tennessee troops, also a box of buck and ball cartridges, and our boys have been trying to see who could shoot the largest loads out of them, directing the fire down through the woods at the Federal sharpshooters. Some have shot a handful of buckshot and several balls at a single load. Sharpshooting kept up briskly from both sides. We think the Federal sharpshooters are terribly inconvenient, and they have the same opinion of ours. We captured one of them, and he told General Bate that our sharpshooting is excellent, but that our artillery is not worth a damn. I finished reading Miss Evans's new novel and think it of not much force. About 4 p.m., the boys got to their places and were ordered to hold themselves in readiness to go over the works and advance on the enemy at the signal. We took off all extra baggage so that we would not be encumbered in any way and waited for the word. Soon the musketry and artillery commenced to roar in the valley to our left and front, and the mingling yells of our boys charging were plainly heard. The firing lasted only a few minutes, then became perfectly silent. We knew the division had been driven back, for soon after our neighbors commenced cheering all around the lines. Have just heard the result of the charge. The division was ordered to advance at the firing of signal guns on the left. The guns were not fired, but by mistake the troops advanced. An order was given by General Bate countermanding the move, and aides were immediately sent to the brigade commanders with the order. Tyler's brigade got the order before that brigade got under fire, Finley's brigade before it got near the enemy's works, but our brigade did not receive the order until it had advanced on the works under a heavy fire of musketry and artillery. The brigade alone was charging the 15th Army Corps, strongly entrenched. Of course, the brigade would have been compelled to fall back had the order not reached them. The 4th suffered most, being on the left flank. The regiments were reversed, and was subjected to a flank fire from the troops which would have been employed by Finley's brigade. A battery also enfiladed the regiment. The brigade is terribly cut up. Our regiment was not to go forward until the balance of the brigade swung around in line with it, and failing to do so, we did not advance. The boys think General Bate, Old Grits as they call him, went to General Hardee and got permission to make the charge, reporting that only a Federal skirmish line was in front of his division. The boys generally know what is in front, and could have told General Bate better. He catches it from all sides and quarters. While the charge was being made, Orderly Sergeant Chamberlain of Company H was killed by a sharpshooter, and several of our boys have been wounded in the same way today. Bright and clear tonight. It has been warm throughout the day. May 29th. We have been lying around idle all day. The Minnies have been singing over our heads as usual from the Federal sharpshooters. The boys have been replying occasionally with the old muskets before mentioned. After dark, received 2 letters from home by flag of truce. Having rolled myself up in my blanket, I lay down on the side of the trench to sleep. About 10 o'clock at night, I was aroused from my slumbers by heavy volleys of musketry and the thunder of cannon. The firing broke out so suddenly that for some time I did not know where I was or what was going on. At last I got my eyes open and found my way to our fort, where I found A already. We looked over and could see a perfect sheet of flame coming over the enemy's works, and the flash of cannon lit up the dark woods, so we could see the cannoneers quite plainly. The shell and grape came shrieking over the hill, mingled with the hissing Minnies. We thought we saw a line advancing up the hill and opened fire. We soon saw that the lines were not advancing, and commenced firing at the battery, which did not seem to be very far off. We had 60 rounds of extra cartridges to carry, and we thought this a good time to get rid of them. The battery over to our right threw shells over the hill, which looked very much like rockets flying in the air. Cleburne thought our division was attacked and came to reinforce us. Govan's brigade came up to support our regiment. His men said they were afraid our works would be taken before they got here, and that they plunged through creeks and brush to get here in time. All soon became quiet, and we again went to sleep. We were awakened 2 or 3 times during the night by the same kind of procedure on the part of our neighbors. 3 or 4 solid shot passed through the works on the left of the regiment, but fortunately no one was hurt. They could not have fired better in daylight. As to the cause of the firing, we are at a loss. Some say the Federal skirmishers got drunk and turned around so completely that they commenced firing on their own works, and the lines, thinking we were charging, opened fire. Some of the Federal skirmishers did come over to our side, thinking they were going back to their own lines. One of them came upon the works of the 2nd Kentucky and hollered out, "Colonel, The Rebs are making it so hot out yonder, I can't hold my posish. He found out too late his mistake and was captured. After the first firing was over, an officer was heard riding along the lines, telling that 5,000 rebels had just been captured over on the left, and cheer upon cheer was sent up by our neighbors. As the enemy fired at intervals during the night from their works, I believe it was all done to draw our troops from the right. This is only my opinion, however. May 30th. Early in the morning we moved to the left, leaving Govan's brigade at our position. The works where we stopped being poorly constructed, we commenced strengthening them up. Had not worked long when we were ordered to our old position, Govan being ordered away. Ferguson's cavalry, dismounted, came in to reinforce us. All quiet, save the popping of the sharpshooters and the Federal bullets whizzing over our works. There will be a good lead mine down in the valley if we stay here much longer. The bullets are lying around on the ground now, thick as hailstones. May 31st. Some shelling over on the left this morning. At noon, Stevens's brigade relieved us, and our brigade moved to the left and took position in the works first made by Tyler's brigade to the right of Slocum's battery. Cobb and Slocum have not moved from their first position. We worked in the evening, and some at night, strengthening the defenses, which are not strong enough to resist shells. From experience, the boys don't like for shells to come through the works. Slocum has had 2 of his pieces disabled since he has been here. The 2 batteries have been dueling with 2 Federal batteries across the way. The Federals have 2 or more 20-pound Parrotts in position. Cobb's and Slocum's batteries are now composed of 6 Napoleon guns each. Hot. June 1st. Everything is very quiet this morning. Don't know what is the cause. As the morning advanced, we found that the Federals had left our front during the night. I walked around their works, which are very strong. Nothing left but beef bones and empty ammunition boxes. In some places, the bushes in front of their works are literally mown down by Minnie-balls, done on the night of May 29th, I presume, and when our brigade charged on the 28th, late in the afternoon the division fell in and marched 5 miles to the right, bivouacking near New Hope Church for the night. The evening was warm and the march was quite tiresome. June 2nd. Early in the morning, we moved a mile further to the right and formed in the rear of Strahl's brigade, some cannonading along the line and sharpshooting. At noon, the rain poured down for an hour in torrents. We could do nothing but take it as it came. At 2 p.m., the division fell in, and we marched 4 miles to the extreme right of the army. The cannon were thundering all along the line of march, and the Federal shells were tearing through the woods about us. Our brigade stacked arms in an old field, and as night came on, I made myself a bed out of 3 fence rails. Slept well. Clear again. June 3rd. At daylight, we commenced fortifying. After working a while, Major Cobb came and selected our position for Mabane's battery of our division. We then moved around to the right of the brigade and commenced a line of works through a peach orchard near a house, General Bates' headquarters. At noon, we were ordered to stop work. In the afternoon, the rain poured down. At night, slept with G under a dogfly. Stopped raining at dark. June 4th. Before daylight, went with the company a mile in front as skirmishers. Lieutenant Ellis and I took up quarters in a house which had just been vacated by the family in front of the skirmish line, with the intention of setting it on fire in case the enemy advanced, so it would not protect his sharpshooters. As there was a cavalry picket in front, we did not have to be very watchful, so we kindled a fire and lived at home. K and W killed a large pet hog belonging to the premises, and while scalding the animal in the large pot at the spring, the old lady came after her pot and caught them in the act. After giving them a piece of her tongue, she reported them to Captain Steele, in command of the brigade skirmishers. He immediately had them arrested. When the old lady had gone, being satisfied, as the captain had promised to report the offenders to the general, the culprits were turned loose and went on with their cooking. Part of the meat, after being cooked, went into Captain Steele's haversack, and it is not likely that the bear hunters will be reported. It rained at times during the day. At sundown, we were relieved by Company D. When we got to the regiment, the boys were drawing clothing. It started raining at dark. I am under a barn shed by a fire. We have orders to march at 11 o'clock tonight. This morning, after Company B went on skirmish, the remaining companies were ordered to complete their works, but when nearly done, they had to move for a Parrott battery to be placed in position. The colonel would not fortify any more. He said he had given away for batteries long enough, and that if a fight came off, his regiment could simply take it straight. I don't think I can sleep any tonight. I shall smoke over the fire until we have to march. It looks awful dark, and the rain is dashing down. June 5th, last night, we fell in at 11 o'clock and marched to our present position near Pine Mountain. The distance we marched was only about 4 miles, but it was the muddiest and most disagreeable march I have made since the war. The night was as dark as pitch, and the rain was pouring down. I could not see what kind of a country we marched through, but it seemed like one continuous swamp, the mud and water being from ankle to knee deep every step. Troops have preceded us, and the mud was well worked up. I kept on my feet all the time, but many of the boys fell down and would splash and splatter the mud in every direction. When a fellow would fall, his more lucky comrades would yell out to him to get up out of that mud. "What are you doing down there?" etc., etc. About 2 o'clock we filed off to the left in an old field and stacked arms. I composed myself to sleep on a log and never woke until the sun was shining in my face. About noon, we moved into the woods and formed in the rear of Cheatham. All quiet in front. General Hardee stated the next morning that the march that night was the most disagreeable he had ever made. June 6th, cloudy morning. At noon, we moved 2 miles and formed a line on Pine Mountain, digging all evening in trenches. Rained a heavy shower. Slept well at night. June 7th, finished works. Light rain in the evening. Can hear the drums of the enemy 3 or 4 miles in front. Can also see the smoke rising from their camps. The enemy has been comparatively quiet for 3 or 4 days. June 8th, cloudy, warm morning, all quiet in front. Wrote a letter home in answer to one just received by flag of truce. June 9th. Some artillery firing to the right and left of us during the day, light rain in the evening. June 10th. Early could see our cavalry falling back, skirmishing, raining at 8 a.m. Soon after, while standing on the works, I saw the glitter of bayonets in a skirt of woods over the way, and soon after, the skirmish line of the enemy came yelling over the field in front. A moment later, the middle battery opened on the hill in front, where our skirmish line is established, and soon after, the battery to the right opened on our hill, being 1 mile and an eighth off. First, the shells fell short, but they soon got the range. The noise of the sharpshooter sounds quite natural. Pine Mountain and the hill in front are covered with trees. The line of the Federals runs mostly through fields. As yet, our battery has kept quiet. At 6 p.m., went with the company on skirmish, a wing of the regiment being taken at a time, and our position was in front on the hill, rather to the right of the brigade. Had heavy showers of rain during the day, and when night came on, my clothes were wringing wet. Not being allowed any fire, and being cold, I slept none during the night. Our neighbors kept up such a noise, too, bugling, rattling drums, and chopping, etc. No one could have slept in a feather bed in that neighborhood. A long night, but day at last came. June 11th. Rained heavy showers during the day, and it was a weary day. Late in the afternoon I went out in front as a vidette, and 2 or 3 from our regiment and myself, with 2 of the 4th Tennessee Cavalry, had some fun getting a party of Federal sharpshooters out of a house in front of us. After the Federals fell back across the field, we had quite a little battle. One of the 4th Tennessee soldiers was wounded in the arm. Late in the afternoon, that is nearly sundown, our Parrott battery opened on a line of the enemy advancing to fortify to our left, and the Federal batteries opened on our main line. The firing was pretty regular for a while, but which passed over our heads. At 6 p.m., we were relieved by one wing of the 4th Tennessee Infantry. At night, I slept very well. June 12th. Am lying around loose. All quiet save for sharpshooting. Our division seems to be holding Sherman's troops in check, while our main army is fortifying 2 miles to the rear of us and Kennesaw Mountain. June 13th. Did not sleep any last night, as the rain was pouring down, and I had to sit by a fire all night with my blanket thrown over my head. It rained all day long, slacking up at night. Heard locomotives whistling at Big Shanty, which is not very far above Kennesaw. Sherman is bringing the cars with him. This concludes the 13th part of the story. Thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe for more stories and leave a comment.